Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here today on the Locked On Nationals podcast. Today it is the 18th of July, 2022. Busy show today. The Nationals have made another offer to Juan Soto from reports. He has turned it down, so the Nationals might explore trading him. There's a whole lot of meat on that bone. We'll get to that. And also the Nationals drafted a couple guys last night as well in the first and second rounds of the 2022 Major League Baseball draft. So we'll get to that. A busy show coming up on Locked On Nats today.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Once again, Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Nationals podcast today, brought to you by our friends at Blue Nile. Thank you guys for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day. You guys can find this show wherever you get your podcast and here on YouTube as well. Guys, also, sorry about any audio quality dips last week. I have the really nice mic right here, but I'm going to have to switch out cords for it. So right now using the Yeti mic, it should be a little sound quality drop off, but not anything that sounds horrific. If it is, please let me know. But so it's funny because the Nationals right now, the baseball is actually being played in the field feels so insignificant. And they've gone for these long stretches where, we talk about, I did a bunch of Josh Bell trade episodes and videos with various people, Lindsey Crosby over at Locked On MLB Prospects, Tim Kelly over from Odyssey Sports. And we talked about, Josh Bell trade locations, and we've been doing that for a while. And now all of a sudden you get this Juan Soto news the weekend of the draft. And so, weekends being weekends, we don't really usually do episodes. Also, it doesn't make much sense with all the news that was changing. Going into an all-star week, it's easier to wait, but then things double up. So we'll have plenty of coverage this week about both the draft and the Juan Soto stuff. And there's a lot of different angles to hit it from. We'll talk to Matt Wyrick of NBC Sports Washington. Hopefully we can get Lindsey Crosby on to tell us about the new Nationals new guys who can become prospects that they have just gotten and added into their farm system with the draft last night. But today's episode is really just kind of be like, more, not an emotional reaction, but more of just my thoughts about, we'll hit the draft stuff, but really this whole weekend has just been a whirlwind, and it kind of is a good, I think, inflection point about the Nationals franchise and where it is. And, we'll catch you guys up. If you all don't know, I'm going to read from Jesse Doherty here at the Washington Post. And this is one thing I've mentioned about baseball news before. It's really strange is that in basketball and football, you've got your primary guys that you trust all the time, right? In basketball, you've got Woj and Shams and, Kevin O'Connor and Zach Lowe. In baseball, you've got John Heyman, Jeff Passan, Ken Rosenthal. But those people aren't, they're not allergic to getting stuff wrong, right? I mean, last year we saw with the Max Scherzer trade that, it sounded like he was going to be going to San Diego, according to Ken Rosenthal. And it turns out, he ends up going to the Dodgers in the trade for with also Trey Turner, Josiah Gray there as well, as was Keibert Ruiz coming back, Gerardo Carrillo, and Donovan Casey too. But that's not what it sounded like for a while. And so, my whole point in saying all this is think about all of the there's been various reporting about what happened this weekend. So the first news came from Ken Rosenthal over at The Athletic. And it said that he had turned down a 15-year, $440 million offer that was made. Now, I'm going to read you all from Jesse Doherty's reporting at the Washington Post. He kind of went a bit deeper on this. He said he talked to 4 people with knowledge of the matter. And now there is doubt about retaining him long-term. And so the club is going to field trade offers ahead of the August 2nd deadline. Now, what you have to understand here is that the Nationals have the rights to Juan Soto arbitration through this season and the 2 following seasons. So he would be a free agent after the 2020. So they got him for 2022 and 2023, 2024. So he would be a free agent heading into the 2025 season after the 2024 season. I always get the math wrong. But yeah, that is when he would be a free agent. So the Nationals do not have to trade him now. There's no pressure to do that. The offer came near the start of July, so it's July 18th when recording this, and that's according to two people familiar with the situation that Jesse says. And then also, we also got these comments over the course of the weekend from Juan Soto. He says, quote, "It feels really bad to see stuff going out like that because I'm a guy who keeps everything on my side. I keep everything quiet," Soto said. And, I saw also Mark Zuckerman from Masson say that Juan Soto was looking quite kind of somber after he made these comments. He doesn't want this stuff out there. He likes being in DC. He's enjoyed his time with the club. Um, I think the Scott Boras side of this is always going to be something we have to talk about. I mean, this is a guy who wants to set precedents, right? He wants to set standards. And so while Juan Soto at $450 million can be, the largest dollar figure, I believe, in terms of average annual value, that's not going to even be in top 20. So that's kind of, I think, where there's a crossroads. Now, here's the problem is that you're not going to get, I don't think you're going to get a 15-year contract that's worth $40 million a year, right? You end up, parsing that out. That's going to get you around $600 million. I think it's, math is not being, it's somewhere that right, $600 million, 40 a year. I think it's right. Yeah, somewhere in that range, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. He's not going to get that much money. It's not going to end up being, he's not going to end up getting that amount of money. It's just not going to happen that you're going to get a $600 million contract. $500 million, yeah, definitely. That's being for what's being talked about. $600 million, I don't see anybody giving him, approaching. I mean, once you're over $500 million, it's pretty crazy at that point. What you're talking. It's crazy now to be talking about this. But there is precedent there to set. That's kind of the point here, is that they could set a precedent with the contract. And I think the problem, there's so many angles to this. I kind of wrote down 5. I wrote the money, Juan's comments, team ownership, team, how competitive the team is currently, team philosophy, and those are just 5 things that the different angles we could hit. We could hit fan sentiment, right? Involved in this also. And there's, obviously we just talked about the player side of things, which is kind of part of the money, but also the precedent side of things. There are so many different angles that to come from the situation. And I've just been thinking and talking to people all weekend, and I feel different ways about this, because to me, I want to see guys like Juan Soto stay in Washington, D.C. I think it's good for the sport if the stars are broken up. I don't think it's good if we have a few stars in a lot of places. And Mets fans might want to see Juan Soto there, but I don't need to see the Mets collecting and hoarding talent. I wouldn't want to see the Nationals collecting or hoarding a ton of talent. And I mean the guys who are, if you build and cultivate a great young winning team, or a winning team in general, I'm cool with that. But there's only so many players that we want to see all in the Dodgers, right? Do we want to see, do we want to see all the best players all on one team, super team type deals? No, we don't want to see that, right? I think it's better off in the sport when we distribute stars. And I think, there is some distribution of that right now, but, if teams like the Nationals aren't willing to take on, to sign players like Juan Soto, somebody else will. And it's usually only a few somebodies. And that's kind of why I think a lot of us don't like it. It's just, in basketball's a little bit different. I mean, the Warriors win, right? The Spurs have won recently. The Mavericks have won. It's not just big threes and super teams winning in basketball. You can pair guys up and try to win, but it's not like there aren't examples across the last 15 years of teams. The Warriors were kind of a super team and they had Durant, but think about the fact that, an injured Clay and a 33-year-old Curry and an aging Draymond were able to pair up with Jordan Poole, right? And guys like that, and Gary Payton II, and Kevon Looney, and those guys are winning titles. That is team building. That's winning with a team is what that is, right? I know Giannis is an amazing player, but Drew Holiday, was arguably the second best player when they won the title. You like to see the Nationals are a great example in baseball. You love to see a team built the way the Nationals were winning all. The Braves last year was a clinic in team building. That's what you want to see. You want to see, people build teams. And it kind of gets to one part of this, like, is the best way to build a team trading a Juan Soto? Is a one guy worth all of that? Right? That goes to kind of the team philosophy piece of this. So there's so much stuff in play, but here are a couple of things that I've taken away from this weekend. Number one, to the fans out there who are Washington Nationals fans, this is a gut punch. This really does hurt. And I don't think we should blame one specifically. I actually don't think the front office should be blamed specifically, because think about it like this. The Lerner family sounds like they're pretty close to wanting to move on with the Nationals, right? Obviously, the old Lerner's kind of out there. Mark was there. They won a championship, but do you want to be fully invested in a rebuild like this? And obviously, we've heard that they want to sell the team. So there is that aspect of this, and that's why I'm not really super mad at them. The one thing I've come back to about the fans is this sucks for the fans, because you saw Bryce walk. You won the title, which was amazing. It was great. But the thing that Nationals, that people outside of DC don't understand is, and I started doing this podcast back in January of 2020. So with COVID, people didn't really get to enjoy the Nationals championship. And I made this point to a couple of buddies last night, and they agreed with this. And so I kind of like to bounce ideas off some of my friends and then share them with you all, and want to get your all's thoughts on this. The Nationals didn't get to enjoy that title. I went to 2 Braves games this year, and every single Braves game feels like in some way, shape, or form, there is a piece that is a celebration of the 2021 championship, or excuse me, 2020. We're in 2022. Yeah. So 2021 championship that the Braves won, there is some element of celebration that is happening all of the time. The Nats fans didn't get to do that. This thing fell apart rather quickly, right? I mean, we got to see, really in the stands appreciating our champions, if just use that term. Like, you all as fans didn't get to appreciate your champions for that long. 2020, shortened season, no fans. 2021, sell the deadline. But remember, part of that beginning of that season, they didn't, the crowds weren't full, and they eventually got there. But, there was not, they're celebrating, yes, of course, but you didn't get to fully appreciate those guys. And they try to kind of make that second run, that second push, if you will, obviously, and things fell apart. Strasburg's injuries, Corbin's lack of success. They did fall apart a little bit last year, thinking about how old the team was. So, the Nats had a window, and I've mentioned this a bunch. Their championship window really did begin in the early, teens, aughts, whatever they call it. But between 2011, I guess you could say, and 2019, that was really their championship window. They just happened to win at the very end of the window. And it sucks they didn't get to appreciate that at all. And you see Bryce and the Phillies, and you hear about these numbers being kicked around, and the Nationals now are thinking about trading him. It brings me to, so once again, point there being, I feel bad for the fans. I really do feel bad for you all as fans, as Nationals fans, that you didn't get to fully enjoy that championship. You didn't fully enjoy that title the way you should have. To think about it now from the Juan Soto perspective, what he is. This guy is a superstar. I always talk about putting butts in seats and jerseys on backs. That's what guys like Bryce do. That's what guys like Juan do. When you're making an investment in Juan Soto, you're not just investing in the player, right? You're investing in a guy who is going to be the face of your franchise for as long as he is here. It gets to the next point, though, of and he has been tremendous, and he's a great player, and he's really fun to watch. The question is, for the Nationals, about where they are as an organization, is the right move going to be paying a guy like Soto and trying to rebuild around him, or completely raiding somebody's farm system of potentially really good prospects and then trying to build a team like that? I actually thought Jeff over at Locked On Dodgers made a good point. The Dodgers aren't going to make the trades that completely drain the farm system. Right? The Max trade, I mean, those were guys who are pretty, expendable. I mean, let's be honest. Think about think about Tony Gonsolin this year, just absolutely killing it. Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw. This team is totally fine in that department. They don't need Josiah Gray. Julio Urias, too. I don't want to forget about him. They don't necessarily need a guy, and they should have Trevor. I mean, I'm not saying Trevor Bauer's a good guy, but in theory, if everything went okay, Trevor Bauer would be with that team. With the free agency signing there, they have guys they can expend, but do they want to give up everybody to get a player like Soto? They typically don't want to do things like that. That's why they've been able to keep their competitive window for so long. Astros, really good example too of a team that's not selling the farm for anybody and a really good job of developing those guys from the farm, and they come up and they've made big impacts. And so, I think the Mets at times have fallen ill to giving up too many guys to make trades, to make things happen. The Nationals need to really consider about, okay, do we want to restock the farm to build this really good, try to build a really good team? And then from there, we have the assets to potentially make trades down the line. Good example, Kevin Parada, was a guy that we talked about. Hey, could the Nationals draft him? They didn't draft him, right? But, is this a guy that, could be around if you want to make that trade later on? Elijah Green is a guy that I think people talk about as a potential superstar, right? Is that a guy that you trade up, somewhere up and down the line to get that guy finally that you need? The Nationals don't have the ability to even make deals right now because their farm system is so shot. Now, they're not competitive right now, but if let's just say if they were competitive, they don't have that. So Juan does present a really amazing opportunity to completely raid somebody's farm system of a lot of really good players. I'm still a believer they should get maybe one or two guys at the major league level who are already kind of proven, just so it's, like you can get somebody to help teach some of these kids. Because, Juan Soto is one of the vets at this point, right? He's he's one of the vets, though, which is a really interesting part of this, is that he's like one. The vets are probably going to go. Cruz gone. Bell's going to be gone, we think. If Juan's gone, who on this team? Like Victor Robles is the vet. I know Cesar Hernandez is there, but he's on a 1-year deal. Michael Franco is on a minor league deal, right? So these guys, and Alcides Escobar is around. Hiri Adrianza, like these aren't pros who are going to stick around with the team. They're going to be gone, right? So you're not going to have that. So I'm not saying they should get like an old guy in this trade, but I'm just saying, I'm just spitballing. Like, hey, I talked about potentially a Luis Severino, being in a trade with the Yankees, whatever. But also one aspect of this too is ownership. We mentioned the learners, but I have a tough time seeing the Nationals, and I've said this bunch. I'm going to say it again. I have a tough time seeing the Nationals trade Juan Soto before giving the new ownership group. If there is a new ownership group, we think there is going to be a new ownership group. Let's just, if you want to sell a team, I don't think it's fair to trade away your best asset for the team and decline and depreciate the value of the asset and then trade off somebody else. I just don't think that's smart business. Like, let the next group of people be the ones to decide what happens with Soto. Because we do know this, and I have not even mentioned this yet, but the Nationals intend to make at least one more offer to Soto. And I would be shocked if I would be shocked if it was just one. I don't believe that, like, there's ultimatums, especially this much time left to trade him. And look, there's no pressure for you to do it right now. You've got a nice year or so to do it. Because you can always be negotiating that time. But like the Nationals, there is time with this. Now, obviously, don't sit on your hands, and they're making offers, and there's counter offers. What we just mentioned, last one was 15 for $440. But, I don't think this Nationals ownership group should be the ones that decide what happens with Juan Soto's future in DC. If it's not going to be the ownership group, right? I think that's got to be a huge part of this. Is the new ownership group needs to sit down and assess what they want to do, what they're, we talked about how do you construct a team, right? They have to decide how they want to build that team. Now, we know Rizzo and Dave Martinez are going to be back, most likely back. You never know, these things happen, but we think they're going to be back in 2023, right? So we think that group's going to be there. But hey, if there's new ownership, maybe they want to make some changes at those points. We don't know. So I would say while they're going to explore trades, I do not expect him to be dealt at this deadline. I do not see that coming at all. That is something that a team really has to sit back and think about. Like, okay, gathering the capital, making that decision, deciding what the window is, trying to get an extension in place. Like, this stuff's going to take time. I really do not see it happening for the trade deadline. It'd be such a massive deal. The Nationals hang on to him and make at least one more offer or two, see what happens with ownership, and then we go from there. So I wouldn't hit the complete panic button yet, but this weekend has definitely given us a whole lot to think about in that category. All right, so quick word from our sponsors, and we'll touch on the draft last night, something positive. Today's show is brought to you by Blue Nile. If you guys need a special something for that special someone, Blue Nile has got you covered. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And going on now, it's the Blue Nile anniversary sale. Save up to 40% on classic fine jewelry pieces and 25% on engagement ring settings. Plus, every order is insured, it ships free, and arrives in a discreet package, so it won't give away what's inside. You can shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. Once again, that's BlueNile.com today. And you guys can get that special something for that special someone. All right, so the draft was last night. The Nationals made a couple selections, and their number one pick, number 5 pick overall, was Elijah Green. And so there's been a lot of talk about the kind of player that Elijah Green is. And the things that we are hearing, about him, it's really about what he, and also he's the son of former NFL tight end Eric Green. But what you hear about Elijah Green, he is 6'3", 225. This is a big kid out of IMG, and I'll read you guys the scouting report from MLB Pipeline. I think it's MLB Pipeline, whatever, MLB.com's prospects thing. He's 18, born in 2003. Makes you all feel old. 6'3", 225. So they have the scale which they use: 50 hit tool, 60 power, 70 run, 60 arm, field 60 overall, 60. He's the son of former NFL Pro Bowl tight end Eric Green. He looks like he could have followed his father's footsteps had he not desired a future on the diamond. Green really jumped on the map with a strong performance at the Area Code Underclass event back in the summer of 2020, leading some to wish he'd reclassify for the 2021 draft. But he's shown off his tremendous raw tools at IMG this spring to put himself in position to be a very high pick in 2022. Obviously, he went number 5. He's a right-handed hitter. He's capable of doing just about everything well. He can make loud contact and has proven he can drive the ball to all fields and hit the ball out of the park just about anywhere with at least plus raw power. And he's done that this spring in front of a lot of decision makers. The one question has arisen about his offensive upside has been about his swing and miss in his game. He struggled in the past against elevated velocity, and there are some concerns about his ability to adjust to off-speed breaking stuff, but has assuaged, so I was never know how to pronounce that, assuaged many of those fears with how he swung the bat this spring. He's an elite level runner who can steal bases and cover a ton of ground in the outfield, where he should be able to man center field with a plus arm for a very long time to come. His complete tool set doesn't come around very often, so it's likely someone in the top of the first round will call his name, even if there are remaining questions about his hit tool. So like many people at his age, there are questions, right? But it sounds, from what people are saying about him, it sounds like they got an athlete. They got an athlete that you don't normally see on the baseball field. And it's interesting because the last guy the Nats got that fits this bill, it was last year, right? Brady House, big guy, tremendous athlete, wants to try short, probably will play at third, really good pop, has been awesome so far in his minor league stints, with the way he's played, shown a lot of promising signs, right? So I think that's what I think, first of all. Now, look, you all have heard me talk about some of the, the prospecting part of things before. And we'll get more into this as the week goes along, but this stuff can be just crapshoots, and I'm not going to pretend to know a ton about these guys. I don't. Will, the other guy they drafted Jake Bennett, lefty out of Oklahoma. The Nationals have shown an affinity for OU. Cade Cavalli is also an former Oklahoma Sooner, and so they now add another Oklahoma Sooner in the form of Jake Bennett. So adding a lefty there, apparently he's got pretty decent, really good velocity. And then also talked to a couple people who saw him in the regional against Virginia Tech. And so he's trying to add a slider right now. And the slider was really, really effective in that super regional and really did, he was great in pitching Oklahoma, helping them get to the College World Series. So 2 interesting guys. We'll get more on them as we go through things, but just wanted to stop and talk about that. So much to get to. We'll have more coverage as the week goes along. And obviously Juan Soto, the aforementioned, will be in the home run derby taking place tonight. So that is to look forward to also. One more word from our sponsors. We'll get out of here. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at BetOnline and BetOnline.net. Go to BetOnline today. When you guys do, you can bet on the home run derby coming up tonight. You guys can bet on future MLB games. You guys can bet on NASCAR, F1, boxing, UFC, all of those things at BetOnline and betonline.net today. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. You guys can find me on Twitter at @JoshNeighbors_. You guys can find the show wherever you get your podcast, and you can find us on YouTube as well. Till next time, my friends, as always, stay safe.